The warning came on a Tuesday morning when most of Earth was still drinking coffee and checking their phones. The message appeared on every screen, every device, every communication system across the planet at exactly 9:47 a.m. Eastern Standard. Time Commander Jake Sullivan was in his office at Luna Base when the transmission started. He had been reviewing supply reports when his computer screen went black. Then strange symbols appeared, followed by words in perfect English. People of the third planet, you will listen. You will obey. Jake leaned forward in his chair. He had been waiting for this day for 3 years. Ever since the deep space monitoring stations had detected the first alien signals, he knew they would come eventually. The voice that spoke was cold and mechanical. It came from everywhere at once. The speakers, the walls, even the metal desk seemed to vibrate with the words. I am Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain. You have 7 of your rotations to surrender completely. Lay down all weapons, disable all military installations, prepare your population for processing. Jake grabbed his communication device and tried to contact Earth Command. The line was dead. All communications were blocked except for the alien broadcast. Resistance will result in the complete elimination of your species. We have conquered 473 worlds. None have survived defiance. Your weapons are primitive. Your defenses are inadequate. Your military tactics are known to us. On Earth, Captain Lisa Monroe was in the Pentagon when the message played. She stood in the main briefing room with 50 other officers, all staring at the massive display screen. The alien symbols looked like twisted crystal formations, but somehow everyone understood their meaning. We have studied your wars. We know how you fight. You are predictable. You follow patterns. You use formations we have seen before. Your greatest warriors could not defeat our lowest-ranked soldiers. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine, but not from fear. She had spent the last 2 years analyzing every piece of alien technology they had recovered from crashed probe ships. The Zephyrians were advanced, but they had one major weakness. They were too confident. The message continued. Your leaders will present themselves at coordinates we will provide. They will sign documents of surrender. Your military will stand down immediately. Any ship or weapon that remains active after the deadline will be destroyed along with the nearest population. Center. General Peter Hayes walked into the briefing room just as the display showed images of destroyed planets, worlds that had been turned to glass, cities that were nothing but craters. The Zephyrian Empire did not make empty threats. This is your only warning. Prepare for integration or prepare for extinction. We arrive in 7 rotations. The transmission ended. The screens went back to normal, but everything had changed. Jake looked out the window of Luna Base at the Earth hanging in space below. Somewhere out there, beyond the outer planets, an alien fleet was coming. They had 7 days to prepare for the most important battle in human history. He activated his emergency communication system and sent a coded message to Earth Command. 3 words. Protocol 7 active. On Earth, General Hayes received the message and nodded grimly. Protocol 7 was something they had hoped never to use. It was their plan for fighting an enemy that was stronger, faster, and more advanced than anything humanity had ever faced. Lisa Monroe was already moving. She gathered her files and ran toward the secure briefing room where the real planning would begin. She had been preparing for this moment since the first alien probe had been shot down over Alaska. The probe had given them valuable information. The aliens were incredibly advanced, but they fought in very specific ways. They used perfect formations. Their ships moved in mathematical patterns. Their tactics followed ancient rules that had worked for thousands of years. That was going to be their downfall. Colonel Amy Rodriguez was at the asteroid belt mining station when she got the emergency signal. She had been inspecting the new mining equipment that had been installed over the past 6 months. Equipment that looked like ore processors but could do much more than dig up rocks. She smiled as she read the Protocol 7 activation order. The aliens thought they knew how humans fought because they had studied Earth's military history. They had watched footage of human wars and learned about human tactics. They understood formations and strategies and all the proper ways to conduct warfare. What they did not understand was that humans were very good at not fighting properly. Ryan Clark was aboard the UES Defiance when the message played. He was a lieutenant commander in the Earth Defense Force, but his ship was not what it appeared to be. The Defiance looked like a standard patrol vessel, but hidden inside its hull were weapons and systems that no alien scanner would recognize. The crew gathered on the bridge to discuss their orders. They had been training for this mission for 2 years, but nobody had been sure it would ever happen. Now the time had come to find out if their crazy plan would actually work. Captain Steve Parker was different from the others. He was not a military officer. He was a mining ship captain who hauled rocks from the asteroid belt to Earth. But his ship, the Iron Will, had been modified with some very special additions. Steve looked at his crew of miners and smiled. "Well, boys, looks like we finally get to test our new drilling equipment." His crew laughed. They all knew what he meant. Their drilling equipment was going to drill holes in alien ships instead of asteroids. Back on Luna Base, Jake was meeting with his senior staff. They spread out charts and tactical displays on the conference table. The alien fleet would arrive in 7 days. They had that long to put their plan into action. "Sir," said Lieutenant Kelly Barnes, his communications officer, "Earth Command is asking for our status report. What should I tell them?" Jake looked at the faces around the table. These people had been working on this problem for years. They had studied every piece of alien technology. They had analyzed every transmission. They had prepared for this exact scenario. "Tell them we are ready," Jake said. "Tell them to activate all sleeping assets. Tell them it is time to show these aliens what humans do when someone threatens their home." The next 7 days would determine the future of humanity. The Zephyrian Empire had never lost a battle. Their elite forces had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had weapons that could destroy planets and ships that moved faster than light. But they had never fought humans before, and humans had a few surprises waiting for them. On Earth, the news of the alien ultimatum spread quickly. Some people panicked, some people prayed, some people ran to stores to buy supplies. But many people did something the aliens would not expect. They volunteered to fight. Military recruitment centers were flooded with people wanting to join the defense. Farmers brought hunting rifles. Mechanics brought welding torches. Construction workers brought heavy equipment. Everyone wanted to help defend their planet. The aliens had studied human warfare, but they had studied the wrong kind of war. They had looked at battles between armies and navies and air forces. Professional soldiers fighting other professional soldiers using established rules and tactics. They had not studied what happened when ordinary humans got angry and decided to fight, back with whatever tools they could find. They had not studied asymmetric warfare or guerrilla tactics or the kind of chaotic, desperate fighting that humans did when their backs were against the wall. That was going to be their biggest mistake. As the 7th day approached, Jake Sullivan stood on the observation deck of Luna Base and watched the Earth below. Ships were moving throughout the solar system, taking positions that looked random but were actually carefully planned. Mining vessels, cargo haulers, passenger ships, and even some old satellites were all part of the plan. The aliens were coming, with their perfect formations and their elite warriors and their unbeatable track record. They expected to find a primitive planet with scared defenders using outdated weapons and predictable tactics. Instead, they were going to find something they had never encountered before. They were going to find humans who refused to fight fair. The alien fleet appeared exactly when they said they would. 7 days after the ultimatum, space near Jupiter began to ripple and twist. Then the ships came through. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance as the enemy vessels emerged from their hyperspace jump. He had expected them to be big, but the reality was still shocking. The smallest Zephyrian ship was twice the size of Earth's largest battleship. There were 50 ships in the first wave. They moved in a perfect diamond formation, each vessel exactly the same distance from its neighbors. Their hulls were made of some kind of crystal that reflected the light of the sun in rainbow patterns. "Beautiful," whispered Ensign Tony Williams from the sensor station. "They look like flying jewels." "Flying jewels that want to kill everyone on Earth," Ryan replied. "Keep scanning them. I want to know everything about those ships." Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crystal Throne. He was 7 feet tall with pale blue skin and 4 arms. His race had evolved on a world with low gravity, which made them faster and stronger than most species they conquered. He looked at the primitive solar system spread out before his fleet. The third planet was blue and green, covered with water and life. It would make a good addition to the Empire once the current inhabitants were removed. "Status report," he commanded. "All ships have arrived safely, Admiral," replied his tactical officer. "The enemy has not responded to our presence. No ships are approaching us. No weapons are targeting us." Vextar nodded. This was normal. Most species tried to hide when the Empire arrived. They hoped that if they stayed quiet, somehow the invaders would go away. It never worked. "Deploy the Vanguard units, standard conquest formation. We will give these humans one last chance to surrender before we begin the cleansing." The Vanguard were the elite forces of the Zephyrian Empire. Each warrior was trained from birth to fight. They wore armor that could stop any weapon and carried guns that could cut through solid rock. 12,000 of them launched from the main fleet in perfect synchronization. Their ships formed a spiral pattern as they approached Earth. It was a classic tactic that had worked on hundreds of worlds. The spiral allowed each ship to support every other ship while maintaining optimal spacing for both offense and defense. Colonel Amy Rodriguez watched the alien formation from her command post on Asteroid Mining Station 7. The station looked like any other mining facility in the belt, with large cargo ships docked to its sides and processing equipment covering its surface. "They are doing exactly what we expected," she told her staff. "Perfect formation, textbook approach, completely predictable." "Should we activate the miners now?" asked Major Dan Foster. "Not yet. Let them get closer. We want them committed to their approach vector before we spring our surprise." Captain Lisa Monroe was in the Pentagon War Room, watching the battle develop on the main display screen. Hundreds of military officers and government officials crowded around her, all waiting to see if their desperate plan would work. "The aliens are following standard tactics from their previous conquests," she announced. "Formation integrity is perfect. No deviations from expected patterns. They have not detected our hidden assets." General Peter Hayes stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. He had fought in 3 different wars during his career, but nothing had prepared him for this. They were about to fight an enemy that had never been defeated. "Remember," he said to the room, "we only get one chance at this. If our plan fails, there will not be time for a second attempt." The Zephyrian Vanguard continued their approach. Their ships moved like a school of fish, each one responding instantly to changes in the formation. They had practiced this maneuver thousands of times. Every pilot knew exactly where to be at every moment. Admiral Vextar was pleased with the precision of his forces. The spiral formation was a thing of beauty, refined over centuries of warfare. It was perfect for attacking a planet with limited defenses. "Distance to target?" he asked. "Entering the asteroid belt now, Admiral. We will reach optimal firing position in 12 minutes. "Excellent. Prepare the planetary bombardment systems. We will destroy their largest cities first as an example." But as the Vanguard ships entered the asteroid belt, something unexpected happened. The asteroids began to move. What the aliens had thought were simple rocks floating in space suddenly revealed themselves to be something else entirely. Hidden engines fired up, concealed weapon systems activated. Hundreds of disguised mining ships dropped their camouflage and surrounded the alien formation. Captain Steve Parker was piloting his converted mining vessel when he got the signal to attack. His ship, the Iron Will, had been hiding inside a hollowed-out asteroid for 3 days. Now he fired his engines and burst out of his hiding place. "This is Iron Will to all mining units," he broadcast on the emergency frequency. "Time to show these fancy aliens how we dig for rocks out here." His crew cheered as they opened fire with their modified drilling lasers. The beams that were designed to cut through solid rock worked just as well on alien armor. All around the full asteroid belt, the same scene was playing out. Ships that looked like simple cargo haulers revealed hidden weapons. Mining platforms that appeared to be processing ore began launching missiles. Even some of the larger asteroids turned out to be camouflaged defense stations. The Zephyrian formation, which had been perfect moments before, suddenly found itself under attack from every direction. The aliens had trained to fight other military forces that followed logical tactics and predictable patterns. They had never faced an enemy that hid behind fake rocks and used industrial equipment as weapons. "Report!" Admiral Vextar demanded as his flagship shook from multiple impacts. "We are under attack by unknown forces," his tactical officer replied, confusion clear in his voice. "The enemies appear to be civilian vessels, but they are heavily armed. They are not following any recognizable combat doctrine." This was true. The human miners were not following military doctrine because most of them were not military. They were ordinary people who had volunteered to fight when their planet was threatened. They used tactics that no military academy would teach because they were making them up as they went along. Lieutenant Kelly Barnes was commanding a squad of former firefighters who had taken over an asteroid mining platform. Her team knew how to work in dangerous environments and how to use industrial tools to solve problems. When alien ships got too close to their position, they used mining charges to blow up nearby asteroids and create clouds of debris. The Zephyrian pilots, trained to maintain perfect formations, did not know how to respond to this chaos. Their ships began colliding with rocks and debris. Some tried to maintain formation and crashed into asteroids. Others broke formation to avoid obstacles and lost the protection of their fellow ships. Major Tony Williams led a boarding party that used construction mechs instead of military armor. His team wore the same heavy suits that construction workers used to build space stations. When they cut through the hull of an alien ship, the defenders inside did not know what they were fighting. The Zephyrian warriors had trained to fight, soldiers with military equipment. They had never seen humans in construction gear wielding plasma cutters and welding torches. The industrial tools were not designed as weapons, but they worked very well for cutting through alien armor and equipment. "This is impossible," Admiral Vextar said as he watched his elite forces struggle against what appeared to be civilian irregulars. "These are not military units. How are they defeating our vanguard?" His tactical officer had no answer. The computer systems were showing impossible results. The Empire's most elite warriors were being outfought by what appeared to be miners and construction workers. Back on Earth, General Hayes watched the battle with growing amazement. The plan was working better than anyone had hoped. The alien formation was completely disrupted. Ships that had moved in perfect harmony minutes before were now scattered across the asteroid belt, trying to fight enemies that seemed to appear from nowhere. "Sir," Captain Monroe reported, "the alien commander is requesting reinforcements from his main fleet." Hayes smiled grimly. "Good. Let him bring more ships. We have plenty more surprises waiting for them." The battle in the asteroid belt continued for 6 hours. By the end, the Zephyrian vanguard had been completely destroyed. Not a single ship escaped back to the main fleet. The Empire's elite forces, which had never known defeat, had been wiped out by a collection of miners, construction, workers, and converted civilian vessels. Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The screen showed nothing but wreckage where his vanguard units had been. 12,000 of his best warriors were dead, killed by an enemy that should not have been able to fight at all. "How is this possible?" he whispered. For the first time. In his long military career, Admiral Vextar was facing an enemy that did not fight the way wars were supposed to be fought, and he had no idea what to do about it. No experience dealing with the kind of warfare the humans were using. His attempts to restore order only 3 days after the destruction of the core fleet. Emergency signals reached the Zephyrian Empire's home worlds. For the first time in recorded history, 2 complete battle fleets had been eliminated by a single primitive planet. The news sent shockwaves through the highest levels of Imperial command. Supreme Admiral Nexusvel was in meditation when the reports arrived. He was the oldest military commander in the Empire, having served for over 2 centuries. He had personally overseen the conquest of 50 worlds and had never seen anything like what happened at Earth. "Impossible," he said after reviewing the battle recordings. "How can savages with primitive technology defeat our finest warriors?" His aide, a younger officer named Corthon, had been studying the human tactics for hours. "Supreme Admiral, I believe the problem is not their technology. It is their methodology. They do not fight like civilized beings." Nexusvel examined the footage more carefully. He watched human miners use construction equipment as weapons. He saw civilian ships ramming military vessels. He observed boarding parties that seemed to have no training but somehow succeeded where elite soldiers failed. "They fight without honor," he concluded, "without discipline, without any understanding of proper warfare." "Yes, Supreme Admiral, and that appears to be why they are winning." The Empire faced a problem it had never encountered before. Every previous conquest had followed the same pattern. The enemy would deploy their military forces in logical formations. The Zephyrians would counter with superior tactics and technology. The battle would be won through discipline and coordination, but the humans refused to follow this pattern. They used tactics that made no sense. They employed weapons that were not designed for combat. They ignored all the rules of civilized warfare and somehow made their chaos work in their favor. Nexusvel made a decision that would change the course of the war. "Deploy the Apex Guard, all of them." The Apex Guard were the Empire's ultimate warriors. They were genetically enhanced soldiers who had been bred and trained from birth for combat. Each one was worth 100 normal troops. There were only 3,000 of them in the entire Empire, and they had never all been deployed at once. "Sir," Corthon said nervously, "the Apex Guard have never been used against a single planet before. They are our ultimate reserve force." "And this is our ultimate crisis," Nexusvel replied. "These humans have already proven that conventional forces cannot defeat them. We need soldiers who can adapt to their chaotic methods." The Apex Guard received their deployment orders with excitement. They had been training for decades, waiting for an enemy worthy of their skills. The destruction of 2 Imperial fleets by primitive humans was exactly the kind of challenge they had been created to handle. Captain Dan Foster was leading a salvage operation in the wreckage of the alien core fleet when long-range sensors detected the new threat. The energy signatures were unlike anything they had seen before. These ships were smaller than the previous fleets, but gave off readings that suggested far more advanced technology. "Luna Base, this is Salvage Team 7, he reported. "We have new contacts emerging from hyperspace. Different configuration from previous enemy forces." Commander Jake Sullivan received the report with growing concern. Earth's forces had taken heavy losses in the previous battles. They had maybe 50 combat-capable ships remaining, and most of those were damaged. If the aliens were sending a 3rd fleet, humanity might not be able to resist it. "What do we know about these new ships?" he asked Captain Lisa Monroe. "They are much smaller than previous vessels," she replied, studying the sensor data. "But the energy output per ship is actually higher. These are not troop ships or battleships. They appear to be specialized combat vessels." The Apex Guard fleet consisted of only 50 ships, but each one was a masterpiece of military engineering. They were built for speed, firepower, and adaptability. Unlike the rigid formations used by previous Imperial forces, the Apex Guard could change their tactics in real time based on battlefield conditions. General Hectaris commanded the Apex Guard fleet from his ship, the Perfect Storm. He was the most decorated warrior in Imperial history, with personal combat experience spanning 40 different wars. He had studied the human tactics extensively and believed he understood how to counter them. The humans use chaos as a weapon, he explained to his officers. They create confusion and exploit our reliance on coordination. Therefore, we will not rely on coordination. Each unit will operate independently. We will match their chaos with our own. This was a revolutionary approach for the Zephyrian military. For thousands of years, they had won battles through perfect discipline and flawless execution of proven tactics. The idea of deliberately introducing chaos into their own forces was almost unthinkable. But Hectaris was not bound by traditional thinking. He had been given complete authority to defeat the humans by any means necessary. If that required abandoning Imperial doctrine, so be it. The Apex Guard entered the solar system not in formation, but as 50 individual ships following separate courses. They spread out across a wide area and began hunting for human forces. When they found targets, they attacked immediately without waiting for support or coordination with other units. Captain Steve Parker encountered the first Apex Guard ship while patrolling near Jupiter in his repaired mining vessel. The alien ship appeared without warning and opened fire before he could react. Only luck and quick reflexes saved his life as he dove into Jupiter's radiation belt to escape. "This is different," he reported to the fleet. "This alien pilot is not following the same patterns as before. He adapted to my evasive maneuvers in real time." Similar reports came in from across the solar system. The new alien forces were fighting like humans instead of like traditional Zephyrians. They used unpredictable tactics, took calculated risks, and seemed capable of learning from their mistakes during battle. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark found himself in a running battle with 3 Apex Guard ships near Mars. They had cornered his destroyer using coordinated but flexible tactics that reminded him of human fighter pilots. His ship was faster, but the aliens were better armed and seemed to anticipate his every move. "They are learning our methods," he transmitted to Earth Command before his ship was destroyed. "They have adapted to fight the way we fight." The Apex Guard proved to be everything their reputation claimed. They could match human unpredictability while maintaining their superior technology and training. Within 12 hours of entering the solar system, they had destroyed 20 human ships and captured 3 more. But the humans were also learning. Major Tony Williams led a boarding action against a captured Apex Guard vessel and discovered something important. The alien super soldiers were incredibly skilled individual fighters, but they had been trained to operate alone. They were not used to working together as a team. "They are trying to copy our chaos," he reported to Luna Base, "but they do not. Understand that our chaos only works because we trust each other. These aliens are too independent. They cannot truly cooperate." This observation led to a new human strategy. Instead of trying to out-chaos the Apex Guard, human forces began using their greatest advantage, teamwork. Human crews had been working together for years. They knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. They could coordinate their actions without formal commands. Sergeant Rachel Miller demonstrated this during a desperate battle near Earth's moon. Her unit was outnumbered 3-1 by Apex Guard soldiers who were faster, stronger, and better armed. But her team had been fighting together for months. They could communicate with hand signals and anticipate each other's actions. The human soldiers used their teamwork to set traps that isolated individual Apex Guards from their companions. Once separated, the aliens were vulnerable to coordinated attacks that exploited their overconfidence and lack of experience with genuine cooperation. Dr. Alex Chen made another crucial discovery during the interrogation of captured Apex Guards. The super soldiers had been conditioned from birth to be perfect individual warriors, but this conditioning had eliminated their ability to form emotional bonds with their fellow soldiers. "They do not care about each other," he reported to the command staff. "They will not risk themselves to save a comrade. They will not sacrifice their own objectives for the good of the team." This psychological weakness became the key to defeating the Apex Guard. Human forces began using tactics that forced the aliens to choose between personal survival and unit objectives. Time after time, the Apex Guards chose to save themselves rather than help their fellow warriors. The battle for Earth's orbital space lasted 3 days. The Apex Guard fought with skill and determination, but they could not overcome their fundamental limitation. They were perfect individual warriors who had never learned to truly work as a team. In the end, General Hectorus found himself alone on his flagship, surrounded by human ships. His entire fleet had been destroyed or captured. His super soldiers had been defeated by ordinary humans who understood something the Empire had forgotten: the power of people who genuinely cared about each other. "Surrender your vessel," came the transmission from the human fleet. "You have fought well, but the battle is over." Admiral Vextar stood in his command chamber, staring at the empty space where his vanguard units had been destroyed. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire had never lost an entire elite formation. Not once. "Summon the Corps. Fleet," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell them we need immediate reinforcements. Full military deployment." "Sir, that will take 3 days for them to arrive," the officer replied nervously. "Then we wait 3 days. And we study these humans more carefully." Vextar had made a mistake. He had assumed that one vanguard deployment would be enough to crush Earth's defenses. He had thought the humans would fight like every other species the Empire had conquered. Clearly, he had been wrong. On Earth, Commander Jake Sullivan received reports from the asteroid belt battle with mixed feelings. They had won the first engagement, but he knew the aliens would not make the same mistake twice. The next attack would be much worse. "How many ships did we lose?" he asked Captain Lisa Monroe. 47 mining vessels destroyed, 12 more badly damaged," she replied. "But we took out their entire first wave. 12,000 alien warriors eliminated." Jake nodded. The trade was acceptable, but it could not last. Earth had maybe 200 combat-capable ships if they counted every converted civilian vessel. The alien empire had millions of ships spread across the galaxy. "What do we know about their reinforcements?" "Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures beyond Jupiter," Monroe said. "Much bigger than the First Fleet. They are bringing their real military this time." Colonel Amy Rodriguez was coordinating the cleanup in the asteroid belt when she received new orders from Earth Command. The aliens were sending a much larger force, and humanity needed to prepare for the next phase of the battle. "Attention all units," she broadcast to the surviving miners. "New mission parameters incoming. We are about to face a much bigger enemy force." Captain Steve Parker was repairing his ship when he heard the announcement. The Iron Will had taken heavy damage during the battle, but his crew had managed to keep her flying. They were patching holes in the hull with spare metal plates and welding equipment. "How much bigger?" asked his engineer, Dan Foster. "Big enough that we cannot fight them the same way," Amy replied. "This time we need to be smarter, not just crazier." The human commanders were right to be worried. The Zephyrian core fleet was not just larger than the first attack force, it was qualitatively different. These were not just elite soldiers following standard doctrine. These were the Empire's best strategists and most experienced warriors. High Admiral Kethrin commanded the core fleet from his massive flagship, the Star Crusher. He had conquered 47 worlds personally and had never lost a single battle. When he received Admiral Vexitar's request for help, he was initially annoyed. How could a single vanguard unit have trouble with a primitive world? But when he reviewed the battle footage, his annoyance turned to fascination. The humans had done something no other species had ever attempted. They had abandoned all military, doctrine, and fought with complete chaos. Interesting, he mused as he watched human miners use industrial equipment against Zephyrian warriors. They fight like savages, but effective savages. Kethran was different from Vextar. Where the younger admiral relied on proven tactics and overwhelming force, Kethran understood that some enemies required creative solutions. He began developing new strategies specifically designed to counter human unpredictability. The core. Fleet emerged from hyperspace 3 days later with 500 ships. These were not the elegant crystal vessels of the first attack. These were massive warships with thick armor and weapons designed to destroy planets. But Kethran did not immediately attack Earth. Instead, he spread his fleet throughout the solar system and began a systematic elimination of human assets. He sent small squadrons to hunt down every mining ship, every cargo vessel, every satellite that might be hiding weapons. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark watched the alien deployment from his position near Mars. The enemy was being much more careful, this time. Instead of following predictable patterns, they were spreading out and covering all possible approaches to Earth. They learned from the first battle, he reported to Luna Base. They are not going to give us another chance to ambush them. Jake Sullivan studied the tactical displays in his command center. The aliens had deployed in a way that eliminated most of humanity's advantages. There were no more perfect formations to disrupt, no more predictable approach vectors to exploit. They are forcing us to fight a conventional battle, he told his staff. Ship against ship, weapon against weapon, and they have better ships and better weapons. But Lisa Monroe had been analyzing the alien tactics and had noticed something important. Sir, they may have better equipment, but they still think like soldiers. They are trying to impose order on chaos. That is still their weakness. Explain. They are spreading out to prevent ambushes. But that also means they cannot support each other as effectively. If we can create enough chaos in enough places at once, they will not be able to coordinate their response. Jake understood immediately. Simultaneous attacks across the entire system. Make them fight 100 small battles instead of one big one. The plan was dangerous because it required splitting up humanity's already small fleet. But it was also the only strategy that played to human strengths while exploiting alien weaknesses. Over the next 12 hours, human forces launched coordinated attacks throughout the solar system. Mining ships emerged from hiding places near Saturn and attacked alien squadrons with jury-rigged weapons. Converted cargo vessels used their large holds to carry massive improvised bombs into the middle of enemy formations before detonating them. Captain Kelly Barnes led a suicide run against an alien command ship using a converted passenger liner filled with construction explosives. Her ship was destroyed in the attack, but it took out 3 enemy vessels and disrupted communications for an entire alien battle group. Major Tony Williams and his boarding teams used captured alien shuttles to infiltrate enemy ships. Once inside, they used their knowledge of industrial sabotage to disable critical systems. Power plants were overloaded, life support systems were contaminated, navigation computers were filled with false data. The aliens found themselves fighting battles they could not predict or control. Every time they moved to counter one human attack, 2 more would appear somewhere else. Their superior coordination became a liability as they struggled to adapt to the chaos. High Admiral Kethran watched his carefully planned operation fall apart in real time. His ships were scattered across the solar system, each one fighting its own separate battle. The humans were not trying to win any single engagement. Instead, they were creating so much confusion that the aliens could not function effectively. Consolidate all forces, he ordered. Pull back to defensive positions around the outer planets. But even this retreat became chaotic when human forces began using captured alien ships to attack other alien ships. The Zephyrian identification systems could not tell the difference between their own vessels and stolen ones being piloted by humans. Captain Steve Parker was flying a captured alien fighter when he joined an attack on the Star Crusher itself. His mining background had taught him how to handle heavy machinery, and alien ships were just another kind of machine. The controls were different, but the basic principles were the same. He managed to get close enough to the flagship to plant a massive mining charge on its hull before escaping. When the charge detonated, it blew a hole in the ship's armor that allowed other human forces to board the vessel. Inside the Star Crusher, human Marines found themselves fighting in corridors that were designed for 7-foot-tall aliens. But they adapted by using tactics that no military manual would recommend. They crawled through air vents, hid in cargo compartments, and used the ship's own systems against its crew. Sergeant Rachel Miller led a team that took control of the ship's gravity generators. By constantly changing the gravity settings, they made it impossible for the alien crew to move normally. Zephyrian warriors, who were trained to fight in standard gravity, found themselves floating helplessly or crushed against bulkheads. Dr. Alex Chen, a xenopsychologist who had volunteered for the boarding mission, made a crucial discovery. The Zephyrian military operated on a strict hierarchy where every soldier knew their exact place in the command structure. When human attacks disrupted this hierarchy, the aliens literally did not know what to do. "They cannot function without clear orders from above," he reported to the assault teams. "If we can capture or eliminate their command structure, the rest will be paralyzed." This discovery led to a focused assault on the ship's command center. Human forces used every trick they could think of to reach High Admiral Kethran. They used maintenance tunnels, blast their way through walls, and even commandeered the ship's food delivery systems to move through areas the aliens would never expect to be attacked from. The battle for the Star Crusher lasted 8 hours, when it was over. High Admiral Kethran was dead, and his flagship was under human control. The loss of their commander left the remaining alien forces confused and disorganized. Admiral Vextar tried to take command of the surviving ships, but he had. In the end, it was not superior technology or perfect tactics that decided the battle. It was something the Empire had never understood: the power of people fighting for their freedom. Human rebels and alien slaves fought together with a coordination that no amount of military training could match. When Supreme Admiral Nexus Vel finally surrendered, he did so not just on behalf of his fleet, but on behalf of the entire Zephyrian Empire. The rebellions had spread too far to be stopped. The old order was collapsing throughout the galaxy. Admiral Jake Sullivan, newly promoted after the victory, found himself responsible for something no human had ever imagined: helping to organize a galactic government based on cooperation instead of conquest. The war was over, but the real work was just